we get into our presentations, we have a couple things. One, what?
Yeah, Ray's just got here.
One more board member just came.
Oh, wonderful.
We just started.
Are there any city representatives here? And if there are, I'd like them to stand and identify themselves, who they are and what city. No city representatives today. Okay. Gretchen, I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
We have a very special video queued up for Mr. Garling in honor of his retirement. Tim, thank you so much.
That's not a home run. Jim, would you like to come up here and say a few words? We'd like you to. First of all, I really want to know when the day is, or what day was.
It's January 3rd, so 2028. Yeah. 3 more days to go.
That's next year.
Yeah. Oh. There we go. Okay. So anyway, well, thank you very much, Gretchen. That was very nice, like that. I've worked really on this Transportation Surtax long before it, it was passed, and was really involved in the ground floor when it was just an idea, and even all the way back to a previous tax that was attempted prior to it that didn't pass. So I've been involved in it a very, very long time. And I'm just so pleased to see that it passed and that things are really beginning to move. I think there's great leadership now at BCT with Corey Kuff-Lonergan, and things are really going to start to happen. So I think the future is really, really bright. I have nothing but respect and admiration for what the MAP board does, and it's just really been a pleasure to serve you all this time, and I wish everybody here in Broward County the best, and I think the great days are coming for Broward County, so thank you.
Well, do you have any particular plans?
Yes, as Gretchen maybe alluded to, it has something to do with baseball, but not quite so active, more from the watching side of it. Yeah. At my age. So I'm moving to Phoenix, and going to pursue a lifelong dream of scouting baseball, and so going to look to I've taken some training and some things like that, so I'm just looking to pursue that as more of a hobby, and see what I can do with that. So I've been a baseball fan my whole life. Arizona is a great place for baseball, so I'm looking forward to the change, and I am going to live right on a light rail line in downtown Phoenix. So I'm actually really looking forward to that, and using public transit there, and taking advantage of that.
Well, I wish you all the best. It sounds like you're going to stay busy, and that's the most important advice I can give you. Stay busy.
Okay, I intend to. So
thank you
very, very much. Okay, and thank you, Gretchen. That was nice.
Wow, we have a couple late arrivals. That's
How
good.
late am I?
Huh?
Am I very late?
No, you're not late. You're only 7 minutes late. Anyway, Gretchen, are we ready for the Miami-Dade County Citizens Independent Transportation Trust update?
I believe we are.
I have a question. Is this
Mr. Coleman?
Yeah.
One question: are we going to hold public comment?
Pardon?
Are we going to hold public comment? I'm sorry if I missed that portion.
Go ahead.
Can we?
It'll be up to the chair as to whether it has to take public comment.
You want to make a comment?
It's not for me. I thought we were holding this meeting at 4:30 to try to solicit additional public comment. So I reached out to quite a few people who I know in the network to come in and comment. Some of them are here now, but additionally, a few will be coming because they weren't able to make it at 4:30, but around 5. So maybe if we want to hold a public comment, maybe after.
Well, if there's a few
Whatever your
people from
discretion.
the public, normally we ask them, we can certainly have them talk first if they don't want to stay for the whole thing, can't we?
Well, I think what I just heard is that there are other people who are going to be coming that would also like to speak. So my recommendation is that you wait to take public comment until everyone is here so we don't have to do it more than once.
You mind waiting a little bit?
Yeah, so let's do Mr. Benencourt's presentation, and then we could hold public comment after maybe. Is that okay?
I don't know how many people we're expecting from the public, so I'll let between you and Gretchen figure that out.
Probably like 5 people.
Okay? Mr. Betancourt.
Good
The
evening,
question
Mr.
I
Chair.
was starting to ask was, this says update, and I'm not so sure, unless I missed something, have we had Miami-Dade ever present to us?
I haven't been here. I don't know about my predecessors. No, you weren't around prior to
We weren't a-
prior to then. So.
You've been around how many years?
It'll be 7 years in January. I mean, I've been but in this role.
The Surtax program in Miami-Dade.
Yes, I've been here 7 years.
How many?
7, sir.
The surtax passed in 2002.
Right. So the
All right,
Surtax
so they
itself has
got-
been around for 22 years, but I've been in this role for 7.
Okay, so we might learn a lot from you.
As I like to say, you might learn a lot of what not to do. But
All right, well,
yeah, we've been experimenting with this a little longer than you have, and we've made our share of mistakes, but we've also, done some great things and made some progress. So I'm all about learning from each other. And actually, Ms. Cassini presented to our trust several months ago, and we learned a lot from that. So we're all here, I think, for the same goal. We're all one region. I actually started my career as an urban planner at the South Florida Regional Planning Council here in Hollywood. And so I've always had a regional mindset, and I believe that we're only going to rise or fall together, and we better learn to work with one another. So with that, I could just jump right in. Okay. So good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust. It's essentially your equivalent entity down in Miami-Dade County. As I said, I'm an urban planner by trade, but one that's always been passionate about transportation and transit and bicycle pedestrian mobility. So I kind of fell into this role through that. My immediate previous job was as Economic Development Director for the City of Coral Gables. So I also bring economic development perspectives into everything we do. I believe you have a copy of my PowerPoint, and I'll go through it here on the screen as well. So 22 years from this past November, presented with this ballot language, asking them if they would increase their sales tax from 6.5% to 7%, a half penny, in order to promote a series of transportation and transit projects, which were affectionately known as the People's Transportation Plan, or PTP. So you have MAP, we had PTP. Your acronym is a lot better. And in that same referendum language, the people were asked whether they would create a Citizens Independent Transportation Trust to act as a watchdog and provide oversight over those funds. There was, of course, concerns that there would be a bait and switch. The county would take those funds and use it for something else. And so our organization is really charged with ensuring that that doesn't happen. We are not the TPO or MPO. We are not the transit department. We don't build, maintain, operate, plan for the future. We're strictly oversight over the funds. The bulk of the funds do go to the county. It started off as 20% going to the cities. It's now up to 23% since some new cities have come on board. So the referendum obviously passed. We've been collecting that half penny now for 22 years. And the CITT's mission, again, CITT is short for the Transportation Trust, is to monitor, audit, review, investigate, and oversee the surtax proceeds and ensure that the promises that were made are actually implemented. So I'm technically not CITT. I am office of the CITT, which is the support staff to the trust, so essentially Gretchen's equivalent. The CITT is made up of these 15, well, you probably only see 13 here because we have some vacancies, but a 15-member board of volunteers appointed by the county mayor, the Miami-Dade League of Cities, and the 13 county commissioners. And they come from all walks of life. So I understand that here you all kind of fulfill a certain role or function. We don't do that in Miami-Dade. It's just general citizenry. You could have any background whatsoever. However, you cannot be an elected official. You cannot be running for office. and you cannot have a fiscal conflict or financial conflict, excuse me, with the county. So you can't have any ongoing contracts between yourself, your firm, or the county. As a result, we don't have a lot of transportation professionals on our board because most of those transportation professionals have some kind of financial conflict. So we have land use, we have attorneys of all sorts, we have retired administrators, we have former elected officials, et cetera. So as I said, I'm office of the CITT. So many years ago, the trust acted, I think, much as you do, where you had a county staff person who reports to the county manager acting as kind of the liaison or the staffer to your trust. At some point in the history of the trust, that was changed, and the trust managed to get the county to agree to have their own staff reporting directly to them. So I was hired by and can be fired by my members, not by the county mayor and not by the county commission. So myself, our office, we report directly to the trust members. And here's what we do, right? Much like probably your staff, we review requests for Surtax funding. We provide a recommendation to our trust members. They, in turn, then provide a recommendation to the county commission. We do some strategic and financial planning looking forward through the years. We administer the municipal program, as I said, that 23% that goes to the cities. We do what I'm doing now, community engagement, marketing, communications, to make sure that the public understands what's happening with their half-penny funds. And then we audit the county and the cities on an irregular basis. Our operating budget, our 11 staff members, were at about $4 million. That's out of about $400 million we're collecting annually. So we try to maintain it. We don't try. We maintain our operating budget at less than 1% of revenues. That's kind of an internal policy. Not required, but that's what we aim for. All right, so enough about us. So a half penny doesn't seem like a lot, especially compared to a full penny. I'm really envious of what you have here. But it's generated quite a bit over 22 years, as you might imagine. Through 2023, we had collected $4.8 billion. Once we were pretty much finalizing the 2024 numbers now, we're clearly over $5 billion in surtax revenues collected. 2/3 of that has gone to Miami-Dade. It was supposed to be new money for new projects, and some new projects. However, a lot of the funds also ended up being used existing transit infrastructure and even towards some operations and maintenance, just out of necessity. There simply wasn't enough general fund and other funding sources to accomplish that, and the new until we fix and upgrade what we have, right? You don't build a second story on a house that's crumbling. So while a lot of it has gone to transit, it has been in large part to upgrade, operate, and maintain the existing. That's changing, though. As I said, 23% has gone to the cities. Less than 10% has gone to public works for roadway projects. And then, as I said, less than 1% to our office. This is basically the same information provided kind of on a year-to-year basis over those 20-plus years. And what this demonstrates is that tax has essentially gone up, as have the expenditures year over year, with the exception of the Great Recession and the pandemic, to no one's surprise. And on average, it's gone up about 5% a year. And again, this is a similar information, but this is our actual annual budget for the year. And you see the percentage that has gone to transit has actually increased as the percentage that has gone to roadways has decreased. Roadway projects are being completed. We've taken a position that we don't want to add more roadway projects until we've really invested more in transit, because transit is really lagging, and that's where our focus needs to be. If you're really interested in the numbers, if you're one of those folks, we have a 40-year pro forma with every penny going in, every penny coming out over 40 years, and it's available on our website. It's for the detail-oriented among you. But that 40-year pro forma is $8 billion, right? And that's largely going to expand transit now along the 6 corridors that were promised to the voters 22 years ago, and we'll get into that. So enough about the money. Now let's talk about the projects, programs, and services that we're helping to fund. So there was an array of promises that were made to the voters back in 2002. People seem to remember Metro Rail expansion and the fact that we haven't accomplished that, but that wasn't the only promise. Yes, we promised expansion of Metro Rail or rapid transit. We also promised expansion of bus service. We promised fare-free transit for all seniors, regardless of income, what we call the Golden Passport. We promised fare-free Metro Mover for those who've been in downtown Miami. That's that little driverless car that runs around in downtown. We promised over 40 major highway and roadway improvements. And we, of course, promised the municipalities 20% of the funds for them to then use towards transportation and transit. So those were the promises that were made. Now let's see how we did with that. Number one, the cities automatically get their 20%. That's distributed on a pro rata basis. So City of Miami has the largest population, gets the largest chunk of money, and then we have these very small cities that get very little, based purely on population and distributed upfront. It's not a grant. We don't review their projects. And I think it's a little different than how you handle things here, and I wish we had your system. So all the cities are required, however, to spend a minimum of what they get, a minimum of 20% of what they get on transit. The other 80% they could spend on other transportation, roadway, traffic circles, bicycle, pedestrian. However, over time, the transit has proven so popular that most cities now spend well above the minimum 20% on transit. Some spend 100% of what they get on transit. And their transit systems feed into the larger county transit system, right? So it actually has kind of like first, last mile or neighborhood circulator complement to the county system. And we really work to help facilitate that and make sure that all of that is connected as well as possible. So in Miami, a lot of our cities call them trolleys. You know, these are rubber tire trolleys. Increasingly, we also see on-demand transportation through a company called Freebie, kind of like Circuit up here. And all of those are fare-free. They don't have to be, but the cities, by and large, have chosen to go fare-free with that. And they're doing a great job moving people around. In terms of major roadway and highway story, 75% of the promised improvements were completed. The other quarter, either it's been decided not to move forward or they're in some stage of completion. And as I said earlier, as they finish these, we're not adding them back in. We're not, bringing in new roadway projects. We want the focus to be transit and connectivity to transit. One of the major projects that kind of falls under the roadway category is the Advanced Traffic Management System, i.e. smart signals. This is a little bit ahead of its time because people weren't even talking about smart technology in 2002. But this is making our intersections more efficient so that we can get people through them faster. We've had some hiccups with this. The initial phase was very successful and it demonstrated anywhere between 15 to 20% time savings where these were implemented. Phase 2 was a total disaster. The vendor ended up not working out. The county recently had to kind of fire them and turn the work over to a new vendor. So hopefully this will now pick up speed. Okay. In terms of transit services that were funded, we have replaced the entire fleet of vehicles along all three modes, so Metro Rail, Metro Mover, and Metro Bus. And Metro Bus, I'm proud to say, the entire fleet has become greener over time through either CNG or increasingly now electric buses. In fact, we just paid for, and the county ordered, the largest electric bus fleet in the country. We'll see how that turns out in our high heat when you start running that air conditioning. But it's supposed to work. We also did expand Metro Rail once to the airport, and that's a great thing to have, but we were supposed to follow that with another 5 expansions that never happened. As I said earlier, the municipalities have invested in trolleys and other services. I have bicycle pedestrian trails up here, but the sad reality is that neither the county nor the city have really used their funds towards a lot of bicycle pedestrian improvements. We are encouraging them to do more of that. We can't force them to, and hopefully we'll see more of that in the future. And then finally, Tri-Rail and Brightline. Those weren't even contemplated in the beginning, but when Brightline came along, we actually invested some of our dollars in both their Miami Central station and their Aventura station with the idea that those would be at some point serving commuter rail, i.e. what we call the Northeast Corridor. I think up here you might refer to it as a Tri-Rail coastal link, at least it was for many years. And we're actively working towards that, so we're optimistic that that will happen. Brightline is great, but Brightline is not affordable to most people for a day-to-day commute. So we need to complement Brightline with a commuter service. Enhanced bus fleet. So the county was supposed to enhance the bus fleet by 63% with our funds. That never happened. They're essentially at the same number of revenue miles that they were in 2002. However, they did undergo a complete rework of the bus fleet in recent years to make it more efficient, more streamlined, have much more frequency on highly utilized routes. And so it's a much better system as a result of that, but I can't say it's at all related to the surtax. And we did expand Metro Rail to the airport. I think I've said that 3 or 4 times now, so that's good. But we failed to frankly expand rapid transit throughout the county, with the exception of the airport. And here you see a map of the corridors that were promised in 2002. They're still the same corridors that are now promised to the voters under a different name. It's called the SMART Plan, Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit Plan. The good news is the county is really focused on achieving this now. So we're all kind of aligned in making sure that this is our priority moving forward. So the 6 corridors are the South Corridor, Beach Corridor, East-West Corridor, Kendall Corridor, Northeast Corridor, and the North Corridor. So we'll start with the South Corridor. This is exciting because this is actively under construction. This connects our southernmost Metro Rail station at Dadeland South all the way down to Homestead, very long stretch. And it's going to be Gold Standard Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT. So it is rapid transit. It's not Metro Rail, but it behaves very much like a train. Level boarding, prepaid fares. You're going to have traffic signals that come down when the bus approaches, so it doesn't have to stop. With what's called traffic preemption. So that's being actively built. It was supposed to start service now, second quarter 2025. It looks like that might be a little delayed, but hopefully sometime next year, this will begin to operate, and I would encourage you to come down and take a tour of it when it does, because I think you'll be surprised at how well this works. And the stations are glorious, by the way. I mean, they're nicer than even many train stations. They're air-conditioned, which even the Metro Rail stations are not. Beach Corridor. So this will connect downtown Miami to the city of Miami Beach, and then also up towards the Design District, Wynwood. Right now, this is contemplated as an extension of our People Mover or Metro Mover system. It's still some discussion and debate about that. The city of Miami Beach has some concerns, but the numbers really back up, the ridership on this route, and I think it would be well supported by the federal government once we decide to move forward with an application. Right now, it's still planning, development, and engineering, PD&E. The East-West Corridor, I'm sorry, I didn't advance this earlier. So here's the Beach Corridor. I'll give you a second to absorb that. All right. East-West Corridor. So much like here, a lot of our commuting pattern is east to west. If you've ever been unlucky enough to be on the Dolphin Expressway or State Road 836, it's probably the last time you decided to go on that because it's awful. And so this would run some kind of rapid transit either on 836 itself or parallel to. Originally, it was going to be BRT on the highway. The county has taken a couple steps back and said maybe we should rethink that. Maybe it should be commuter rail on the CSX lines that run in that area. Maybe it should be Metro Mover on Flagler Street. So they're rethinking that. So that's still also in PD&E. Kendall Corridor, this is likely going to be bus rapid transit out to our suburban community in Kendall. This one is the least likely to happen because the community is split on what it wants. There really isn't a strong political champion. Nobody wants to lose a lane of that street to make this happen. It's already a parking lot, and it would only get worse. So we'll see what happens with this one. The one most likely to happen next is the Northeast Corridor, which you again call maybe the Tri-Rail Coastal Link. So same tracks as Brightline. This would just have additional stations within the county, probably 3 or 4 additional stations to serve those neighborhoods, and it would be at an affordable price point. So in line with regular transit, not Brightline prices. And the federal government did recently announce a $400+ million grant for this project. The state is going to also come in with some funds, and we've already committed our half penny. So I think this is looking good. As long as the new administration in DC honors that commitment. We shall see. And that, of course, is going to connect to and hopefully extend into Broward County, right? And continue even on into Palm Beach County in the future. The other one that will be connecting to Broward is the North Corridor. So this is a long discussed, long desired rapid transit corridor along 27th Avenue. Well, University Drive, I believe, is the same street. And we're taking it up to the county line, and then not sure what you guys plan on doing from then on. But right now, this is the one corridor that is slated to be Metro Rail, elevated Metro Rail. The downside of that is that's extremely expensive. It's a huge lift. We don't currently have the funds. This is going to require enormous federal participation, and I don't know if we're going to get that. frankly, especially under the new administration. So we will see what happens with the North Corridor. We've also invested a lot in park and ride facilities throughout the county over the years, and a number of other projects, programs, and services. So I've only really kind of just given you an overview. Now, in order to implement that 40-year pro forma, and even go beyond that, we need to start looking at additional funding sources. The old local match, state grant, federal grant isn't enough anymore, at least not for us. And so, we're exploring other opportunities for funding, whether it's through toll revenue or parking revenue. We have a little flexibility under local option gas tax. Value capture districts are huge, right? Tax increment financing, special assessment districts. So we're constantly pushing the county to explore additional funding. And other areas of focus, as I wrap up, first, last mile connectivity. It doesn't matter if you build all these corridors. If you can't get to them or if you can't get from that station to your destination easily, you're not going to use it. You're going to stay in your car. So, increasingly looking at bicycle pedestrian connectivity, on-demand circulators, whatever it may be, to connect those stations to the surrounding neighborhoods. Improving the customer experience. Again, people aren't going to use it if it's not a good experience, if it's not on time, if it doesn't perform well, if it's not clean. So we actually launched an ambassador program, which I'll speak to put eyes and ears out in the system to ensure that they're experiencing, a positive result. Enhancing county municipal connectivity is key. We don't have one transit system in Miami-Dade. We have 36. We have transit, we have Tri-Rail, and we have 34 municipalities all doing their own thing. And so we're really trying to forge greater connectivity between those so that from the rider's perspective, it's one seamless experience. Okay? And then finally, community engagement. I believe it's important to communicate to the public what's happened, what they're happening, what they're getting, what they're not getting, so that they're informed and aware and can make wise decisions. I mentioned the ambassador program. So basically, if you ride the system, you apply to be an ambassador, chances are we'll approve you. There's a very low threshold for eligibility. You submit your observations on your experience in an app that's specifically designed for this program. You get points awarded every time you do that, and you can exchange those points for mobility rewards. Free transit pass, free Uber ride, free scooter pass, whatever. So we now have about 100 ambassadors actively out there submitting feedback to us on what they're experiencing daily. And then we both use that for our own oversight, but then we also submit that feedback to the cities and to the county for them to address any concerns that are raised. Great program. The other program I launched in the interest of informing the public is a podcast. This is a partnership with a newspaper down there called Community Newspapers. So every 2 weeks, I have guests on, whether it's elected officials, transportation officials, members of the public, business community leaders, and we talk about transportation and mobility, and we update the public on what's happening. If you're interested in being on, please let me know, and I'll have you on in the near future. And that is just, again, quick overview of who we are, what we do, and what we're hoping to accomplish. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? We'll start with you.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
I noticed you talked about neighborhood programs. I didn't see any examples of any neighborhood improvement programs.
So the neighborhood improvement program, and you're right, I forgot to mention that. That basically refers to a small pot of money that was set aside for smaller projects like traffic signal improvements, not the smart stuff, regular traffic signals, intersection improvements, maybe small traffic circles. So each county commissioner was given a small amount of discretionary funding to put towards those smaller projects within their districts. That's pretty much been used up. So it was something that was part of the original promise, but it's no longer really active. And then the cities themselves, with their 20%, obviously are investing those in a lot of smaller neighborhood improvements as well. Traffic calming, roadway resurfacing, you name it.
The second question relates to the North Corridor.
Yes.
I noticed that it's been leapfrogged a number of times, and
Yep.
other projects have come ahead of it.
Yeah.
And in your presentation, you said you're wondering whether that's going to go as well. And, there's a large black population along the Northern Corridor.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether that's an issue, but you got the city of Miami Gardens at the terminus point. You got the Dolphin Stadium at the terminus point. You got Opelika. You got the junior college in the middle. And Lennar just built a large housing development around 119th Street right off of 27th Avenue. So there is a population that's in need of that rail moving north and south. So I just wonder why it gets leapfrogged every go around.
Over the years, it's been for different reasons, right? Either political or financial. The county was actively pursuing this project over a decade ago, and then when it went to the federal government for federal funding, the federal government stepped in and said, you can't operate and maintain and what you already have. Your system is not in a state of good repair. And the federal government will not give you another penny or half penny until you can prove that your system is in a state of good repair and that you can operate and maintain that new corridor, at least 40 years out. And the county was not able to demonstrate that. That's why they stopped at that point with expansion and said, you know what, we have to upgrade what we have. And we need your surtax funds to do it. And that's why we agreed to it, because we understood that unless we do that, we're never going to be able to expand, because we need those federal funds, especially for Metro Rail. Some of these other things we can do without federal funds. They're lower price points, but Metro Rail is extremely expensive, 10 times more expensive than bus rapid transit. And so we can't possibly do that without strong federal participation. Now, we were hoping under the current administration that social equity, environmental justice issues, because of that community, would help us compete against some other cities for those funds. With the new administration, I imagine, I don't know this to be a fact, that social equity and environmental justice are not going to be, as critical in determining where those funds go. So I'm a little more skeptical because of that. But that's not to say it's not a priority for the county. It absolutely is. It was a #1 priority of the county commission chairman. It's #1 priority of our previous chairman who lives there. And we're constantly advocating to make sure that that doesn't get left behind again. But because it's Metro Rail, that's the difficult thing. It's just going to take a lot of money. Maybe one day we'll get that extra half penny, round us out to a full penny like you have, and we'll be able to do it using our own funds. But short of that,
Alan?
I don't think we can.
Yeah. Few questions. Have you been with the CITT since the beginning?
7 years, so no. CITT has been around 22 years.
I mean, you mentioned a lot of, you said that in some cases you guys have fallen short on connectivity and expansions and things like that. Some of your objectives have fallen short. Is it that you guys, what do you put that towards? Is it because you guys were spread too thin? Was it because you were trying to do too much? Is it because you only had a half a penny and not a full penny? But it, because it's something we can learn from.
Sure.
Sometimes when you try to do bus and light rail, and rather than focusing on one line at a time, and you try to focus on 10 lines, maybe things don't turn out the way they should. So could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a confluence of factors, right? So from the get-go, they were trying for a full penny, and all the promises that were made to the public were based on a full penny. And then at the last minute, in order to get one commissioner's vote to get it onto the ballot, they took it down to half penny, but they never adjusted the promises. So from the beginning, we had a laundry list of promises that can never be met. So #1. #2, the county ended up having to spend our funds on upgrading the existing system. And that was never contemplated in the beginning, right? And so the funds that could have gone to new projects were instead kind of diverted out of necessity. It was either that or raise the millage rate, God knows, by God knows how much, which was not politically feasible. Politics certainly play a role. Every time there's a new election, you have a new county commission, their priorities change, the people in power change, and so what could have been, a corridor in District 1, now all of a sudden, a new commissioner with more power in a different district kind of forces that to become reprioritized. And I just think, it's complex, and prices have gone up considerably, much more so than was contemplated. I believe when you went out for your full penny, you actually had to do a whole financial analysis. We didn't have to do that, right? And so some of our promises and some of our assumptions were never based on sound financial principles from the beginning. Certainly not conservative principles. If anything, they assume the best case scenario. What else would I say? I mean, those I think, are the major issues that we've come across. Well,
Debbie?
Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned smart signals.
Mhm.
Could you just elaborate on what the problems are there and if there's any future for smart signals, or what do you think?
yeah, our major problem with that, again, phase one went well, and then a new vendor won the contract for phase two. That vendor ended up getting bought out by a larger firm that had no experience in this stuff, and just didn't carry out the project, and used every excuse in the book, from what I understand, not to do it. They, of course, pointed the finger at county staff. County staff pointed at them. But at the end of the day, not a lot of work was done. So the county finally just, decided to cut and start over. So it's not that it can't be done. It's been proven in phase one that it can be done. It was just an issue with the vendor. So yes, they are actively working to do that now.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really good.
Sure. Thank you.
Also, thanks for your podcast. I listen to it sometimes. You always.
Oh, good. You're the one guy. I appreciate that.
Trust me, there's a good community that listens to it, that talk about it, and it just adds a lot of insight. So
Good.
it's really cool to see what's happening.
Appreciate it. I'd love to have you on sometime.
Oh, yeah, we'd love to. And hopefully we can continue this synergy with your guys' CITT program. I feel like our board has a lot to learn, and I feel like we could probably make a million questions and keep asking you questions because you guys have just a lot of experience. But you said something that was so interesting. You said we have enough roads and we need more transit. And I feel like that's such a politically charged thing, but was that a consensus that came, was it the genesis of it from the CITT, or the engineers, or everyone just looked in the room and said, we overbuilt our roadway capacity, we need transit?
Yeah. And let me just say, I don't believe we have too much roads. I think there are other funding sources that could go towards roadways. Right?
Yeah,
you have the gas tax, you have impact fees. What we're saying is our funds should be focused on transit because those are the promises that we haven't been able to keep, right? So let's focus our funds on the purpose for which it was created. Keep building roads, keep doing what you want to do. I don't believe that as a policy matter, as an urban planner, but I'm not saying we shouldn't continue to invest in roadways, just not with our funds, because we need to focus on transit. The other thing is, Miami is constrained, I think you are as well. We can't expand roadways anymore. There's just simply not enough room. And also, this is debatable in some quarters, expansion doesn't help, right? Every time you widen a roadway, you're just, inducing more demand, and you end up in the same congestion you were to begin with. And so we really have come to the conclusion, finally, in Miami-Dade County, I wish we'd done it a lot sooner, that transit is the real only option left in order to meet the demands of our growing population. We've reached that point, where everyone is finally kind of aligned on that. There isn't a single county commissioner, not a single person that I know of that isn't at this point supportive of expanding transit. That wasn't the case 10, 20 years ago. We had much more of a roadway mindset.
I would say
that's really
everybody's
interesting
sick of
insight.
the traffic in Miami is what it is. Everybody's kind of fed up with the traffic.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Thank you.
It wasn't fun coming here today, I'll tell you that.
Odell?
Thank you, Javier.
Pleasure.
We can definitely learn from your experience and, keep that in mind in the, future, planning and vision. I have one question. What happens, when the county officials and municipalities don't quite see eye to eye? How do you resolve those?
I never have. You're saying the county and the city?
Yeah.
Oh, all the time. So they often don't see eye to eye, especially our largest city, Miami, and the county are constantly at war with one another. And we sometimes get stuck in the middle. But we do try to perform that role of being the facilitator, of finding common ground. The good news is there is a lot of common ground on transit, for instance, even though sometimes the county feels like the city systems are competing with the county system and essentially taking its ridership. There is a process by which, they kind of work those issues out. So in terms of transportation and transit, at this point, I would say the conflicts are actually fairly minimal. It's really more of who gets the next quarter first, right? So the cities are involved in that game as well. They're not building it, but they want it in their city. Well, for the most part, Miami Beach actually does not want one of the corridors, which is still defying sense to me. But There really isn't a lot of conflict on that issue at this point. There used to be much more when there was that divide between, do we build for cars or do we build out transit? Everyone is aligned on transit at this point. And they understand, by the way, that they can't get any more money. The formula is what it is, so there's no competing for funds. It's really just a matter of making sure that the systems are, connected as well as possible. But there are plenty of fights on other issues, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Javier, I got a couple comments and questions.
Mhm.
You're a 40-year program and you're 22 years in it, so you're halfway there, right?
No, this is 40 year in addition to the 22. We're in perpetuity, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Our sales tax was prior to them changing the law in Tallahassee. You could go in perpetuity, and that's our situation.
So you're 22 and you've added 40 to it?
Yeah. And 20 years from now, we'll add another 40, presumably.
Based on some of the improvements in the transit, has the ridership improved, and what percentage has it improved?
I don't have that number. I mean, obviously COVID threw everything off, right? It was improving considerably. COVID killed it, and we've been struggling like everybody else to get back up.
We would be interested in you sending.
I'll share that information, absolutely.
Because we're always,
Yeah.
I'm always asked, well, what is our ridership? How's it doing? You're 22 years into it. We're not even 5, okay?
Yeah.
You also made a comment about the fact that 20% of your annual, whatever call it, budget, goes to the cities with no strings attached. And to me, it sounded like you don't have any control over it, and that may lead to some other issues. Is that true or false?
We have some control in terms of they have to provide us with reporting on what they're doing with the funds, and then we also audit them on the back end to ensure that the funds were used appropriately. So again, they have to use a minimum of 20% on transit, and they have to use the entirety on some kind of transportation. So if they were to buy a police cruiser with their funds, we'll catch that in the audit, and we'll take the funds back. So we do have that power and that authority. And I have to say that in the beginning, there was a lot of confusion or a lot of gray areas as to what were eligible projects. As time has gone on, the cities know what they can and can't spend funds on, and their citizens are demanding transit. And so the cities are doing a good job. They're doing what they should be doing. They're providing transit on demand or fixed route, and they're providing traffic calming. They're providing bicycle pedestrian improvements.
So you haven't
increasingly
had to
over time.
request any money back so far?
We've had to recap both. What we do is withhold. So if a city does something they shouldn't, we don't give them any more money until that issue is resolved. If they do something really bad, what we call a felony offense, we'll recapture the funds and keep it and then redistribute it to the cities.
You also made a comment that you haven't done enough with pedestrian and bicycle, and we have become, for whatever reason, the worst area in the country for that aspect. Is that something that you are planning to address, or you just?
We can't force either the county or the cities to pursue, those types of projects. We are encouraging. We hold workshops. We educate. We inform, and slowly but surely, both the county and the cities are doing more of that, but it's still a very small percentage of the whole. And what we try to frame it as is this isn't bicycle pedestrian or transit. Bicycle pedestrian connectivity is part of transit. It's the first last mile connectivity to that transit. Transit will not be successful if you can't get to it safely, and conveniently. And so I think that is starting to take hold. And you do see the county kind of certainly pursuing more bicycle pedestrian infrastructure like the Underline, which you may have heard of. And the cities are doing the same on kind of a smaller basis. So slowly but surely, I think we're seeing more of it. We just have a lot of catching up to do.
Because to me, a transit system has to work countywide through all the cities, or it's not going to be effective.
Correct.
We may be in a little better position than you were in that respect, I hope. We obviously have had issues with cities, or the city have issues with us, but the big picture is at least we have, I think, a little more control, and I think it's probably needed after hearing what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have anything else right now, but I would be interested in the ridership.
Yeah, we'll follow up with that
increase,
information, yeah.
The money spent to improve.
Yeah.
I think we're all in the same boat of learning we have to fix what we have or we're not going to get
Right.
new stuff. And I think that was a learning curve for a lot of our public understanding that.
Yeah, when you're selling the half penny or the penny to the public, people want shiny new things. No one wants to talk about just maintaining what you have, but it's important to do that.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Does the commission listen to you? Your recommendations? And can you give us any advice?
I will tell you this. We rarely recommend against something, only because by the time it gets to us, it's kind of been fleshed out. But when we have recommended against it, against surtax funds for projects, by and large, the commission has overridden us. And they have that ability to do so with a 2/3 vote. So they can approve our recommendation with a simple majority. If they want to override our recommendation, it does take a 2/3 vote, but they have not had any issues achieving that.
Unfortunately, our recommendations have been not so much something new to want them to think about, rather than.
Right.
But thank you for that. Anybody
My
else?
pleasure.
Debbie?
Yeah, I just had one more question. Have you did some audits? Have you done a performance audit of the program?
Not really. We try to shy away from being, performance focused. That's not really our mission or our role. Now, in some of our studies, we have looked at, whether they're maintaining their vehicles appropriately, because we don't want to have to pay for new vehicles, sooner than we have to. And so preventative maintenance is important to some of our members. So we did conduct, we didn't call it an audit, but a study to ensure that they're actually performing, a lot of preventative maintenance, and came back with a series of recommendations. So things like that we'll do. But in terms of auditing the county or even the cities to ensure that the system is performing efficiently and effectively, I can't say that we've done that. I know some of our members might want to, but it's a slippery slope. Like once you get into that, you're going to be held accountable for it. And yet we don't have the authority or the tools to enforce it. And so it's one of these kind of difficult situations. Yeah.
Anyone else? Javier, thank you very, very much.
My pleasure. Keep up the great work up here, and hopefully we'll be connecting some of our systems in short order. Okay. And I'll see you on our podcast. Thank you.
Gretchen, do we want to go on to the second, or do we want to ask any public? Are they here? Yeah. Well, then, I think we invited some public to come and speak.
Can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
So I thought the meeting's supposed to go till 6:30 today. I'm going to leave at 6:30, so I would just ask if the public's going to speak, if they get to the point and be brief, and because we still have one more presentation, correct?
We have 4 more.
Okay, thank you. I thought it is till 6:30, right? Is that what the?
That's what we thought. We thought it would be 20 minutes.
All right, well, I have a hard stop. Okay, thank you.
If the public wants to come forward, this is a little unusual, but we're always glad to hear from the public.
We just need everyone who is speaking to fill out a speaker's form, which Roy has. So if you have not filled out a speaker's form, we just need you to do that, please.
Absolutely. Can I do that before or after? Does it matter? Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Max. I'm going to try to limit myself to 3 minutes to be good on time. So what I wanted to say was, first off, thank you to Mr. Betancourt. That was an excellent presentation, and that kind of segues a lot into what I want to talk about, which is that you guys are not just an oversight board of whether the county and municipalities are using this money legally, but also you guys are overseeing if the money's being used effectively. And I'm not going to try to call out anybody here, but I feel like some of this money is not being used effectively because we've effectively siloed ourselves into thinking that we have to reinvent the wheel with all these kinds of projects. And again, not throwing anybody under the bus, but I want to talk about the light rail proposed by the Primo plan for a second, which is that it is very planning level estimates, costing somewhere around $350 to $400 million per mile to build it. And it's because we don't really know what we want out of that system. But we have neighbors down south that have done a lot of this work for us, and it's okay to copy their homework. So one of those corridors, the North Corridor, the Metro Rail extension up to the Dolphin Stadium, they've already done the design work for that. And they've done a value engineering study between Miami-Dade Department of Transit and Public Works, FDOT District 6, and a consultant that's somewhere up in Orlando. I've read the study, the value engineering study, and it's excellent engineering work. And they've somehow pushed down the cost of that rail expansion to somewhere around $200 million a mile, maybe even less. So half the price of what we're going to pay theoretically for our light rail. And I'm not saying that our engineers are necessarily worse. I'm saying that we should be okay with copying other people's homework to be able to drive down those prices. And it's not just the design work, it's also the contracting, the procurement. If Miami-Dade is building something and we're going to copy the design, we also are able to find those same vendors for concrete, for I-beams, for rails. We can just hop on those contracts and add to it. And actually, just a small segue, another thing that was mentioned in the value engineering study was that if transit crosses county lines between Miami-Dade and Broward, it qualifies as an SIS facility, which opens it up to a lot more funding from FDOT. And in that value engineering study, they said that if that Metro Rail corridor extended into Broward County, they'd be eligible for about $500 million more in state funding to build that corridor. And Broward County or FDOT District 4, they didn't say who, said no to that extension into Broward, which is a primo corridor, but we're kind of settled on it being BRT, at least for now. So I guess what I want to say is, like, pay attention to not only the projects themselves that are coming before you, but also the details. Make recommendations and look at what other places have done. It's okay to learn from other people, and it's okay to acknowledge that you might not know what's happening, and that you can look at where things have been done before. What have they done effectively? What have they not done effectively? And, you know, where can we improve or just copy from them? It's okay. We don't need our transit systems to be unique. We can just have Metro Rail. We can do bus rapid transit, and we can see what other people in the state have done, maybe cheaper than we have. If just the light rail were to copy that cost framework of the Metro Rail, we'd be saving about $1 billion on that light rail. That's a lot of money. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any comments? Next from the public then? Is it a different topic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello everyone. As you can tell, I'm a little younger than everyone else in this room right now. So I'd like to speak in a little more layman's terms. I very much appreciate the previous speaker's comments, but I'm unfortunately not as looped into the state and county processes as him. I just wanted to say that I hope that this board and the county at large is able to invest a lot more into prioritizing transit over other transportation projects in the near future. I grew up in Broward, and I hope that by the time that I come to be of some of your age, that we see at least as much rail and BRT development as there is in Miami-Dade, if not more, which would be very much preferable. But I'd like to highlight that in light of what Max, for example, said, I think it's very important that this county focuses on streamlining the funds that are used and the PD&E processes. Because, again, it's good that these transit projects get built, period, but the sooner they get built and the more efficiently, the better. Not only for the purposes of saving money, but because the sooner they're available, the more convenience it is to locals like me, who have never had access to these projects and would very much like to be able to have the ability to use them in the near future. So I'm sorry I don't have any specific policy proposals, but I think that the entire county would stand behind increased investment in transit over other transportation projects, and that the return is going to be a lot more productive for the county's future than simply expanding roadways and building more and more roads, which is what kind of I've seen happen over the years, even though I'm definitely not as old as all of you to be able to see the kind of change over the decades. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I would just comment that I think that's the direction we're heading in. I hear you, but I believe everything we've done in this short period of time is headed in that direction. Alan, do you have anything? Your light's on.
My light's on?
Yeah. And by the way, you'd help me if you want to speak. Put your light on even though you can't, and I can find you.
I would just say that it's decades of years beyond your age that some of us have been sitting at this table. You made me feel pretty darn old today.
Thank you for your comment.
Anyone else? I want to hear a new topic, though. I don't want to hear the same thing.
Don't call out our age anymore.
Hey, I'm the oldest guy
So,
here.
ladies
Don't
and
worry about it.
gentlemen, is this on? Okay.
Young guys coming up.
What a way to start.
Give us your name.
I'm Joe Wynn. I'm a resident. I grew up here in Plantation, just down out west, and now I live slightly further east, but not by much. And I did arrive here by bicycle, and I try to do so when I can to areas. And the reaction that many of you are giving is exactly the issue of what we need to be addressing. So we talk a lot about transit projects, and actually, Mr. Betancourt had a fabulous presentation, and he mentioned a lot of the important aspects that aren't the logistics and engineering of constructing transit, but rather how you get people to transit. Because as he mentioned, a major aspect of transit is ensuring that people can comfortably and safely get to and from the transit, and it goes to the places they want to go, both where they live, where they work, where they shop, where they have fun, where they meet with friends, any number of things. A third place, a bookstore, a library, it doesn't really matter as long as it's the things that they're going to choose to do. If they choose to do it with transit, then that's one fewer car on the road, one less lane that you have to be worrying about filling up. That essentially means that from a more tangible standpoint, that means that you want to be putting priority into enhancing sidewalks, separating vulnerable road users from traffic, protected bike lanes. The City of Plantation is planning to endorse protected bike infrastructure as part of their updated comprehensive plan, and that would imply that no projects can be built in the city unless they are protected bike infrastructure, which they define, or rather, they may end up defining as physical barrier of some kind, whether that's an armadillo or whatever it may be. I understand FDOT's using buffered, and there's room in buffered to add protection. We can focus on right-sizing roads if we have to have curb-tight sidewalks, because walking along a 50-mile-an-hour roadway is loud and it is not comfortable, and people will choose not to do it if that's the only option given to them, even if they have a 7-minute frequency train 1,000 feet away. It's just, they're not going to do it because that in-between is so scary. That entails human-scale wayfinding, shade trees, not palm trees, shade trees, and using buildings and putting sidewalks and ways, multi-use pathways through areas that will create that shade, create that cover, because not every day is like the ones that we've been having lately. We know that our summers go for about, 11 and a half months of the year. So also what this does by creating sidewalk infrastructure and multi-use paths and protected bike lanes is allow you to make your bus infrastructure more direct. Instead of having spaghetti routes that go through a community to accommodate every single person, it allows you to make them more direct, which makes them more frequent, and it makes them more consistent. So meaning your route would take shorter time, and you can have them arriving more often without adding more bus infrastructure into the system. More rolling stock, more staffing, all of that. Thus, making the ride better. A ride from here to downtown to the central terminal is probably about 50 minutes or so on a bus. It is not that in a car. And the fact that it is that significantly different is partially because it has a spaghetti route with stops that go all over the place. And all of those things help to reduce the traffic congestion, and it's a cycle. Oh, are we close to the time? All right.
We're out of time, actually.
Okay, well, I'll finish up then. So that also helps us pursue those goals of Vision Zero, because the more people we can get out of dangerous situations, but also into transit, entails them having a safer and more enjoyable experience. It has to be comfortable. It has to be safe. In Miami, they have a lot of good transit options. People live near the Tri-Rail, but there's no safe way to get to it. So they'll either suffer through it, and it leads to issues, or they just don't use it, and it adds to the traffic on all those wonderful, wonderful roads. So my ask and requests to sum out are working with FDOT when necessary and appropriate, to ensure that any infrastructure and roadways that are worked on are adding protected bike infrastructure, especially areas that are defined as transit corridors, plus multi-use path installations or wide sidewalks, shade trees using existing buildings,
Okay,
and that
I'm
connectivity.
going to interrupt you for two reasons. One, your time is up, but two, everything you've mentioned, we have been discussing here for the last couple of years about bicycle safety, cyber safety. And all I would suggest is you need to listen in to these meetings. Have you ever been to?
I have, yes.
Well, everything you're talking about, we have talked about. And staff, especially the county staff, is going out of their way. And I can assure you, everyone here, especially Mr. Shea down there, is concerned about bicycle safety. In fact, you saw my question of Dade. Well, why haven't you guys addressed it? We need to address it, and we are. So let me just assure you that everything you've said, we have talked about and we're working on. It's not happening, as Ellen says, tomorrow. Thank you.
Good. I appreciate it. I just wanted to comment because some of the projects that have been funded through the MAP Broward system have not necessarily added to that safety. So I'm encouraged to hear that the board is.
We're not going to get into that detail.
Of course.
All right.
I appreciate
Do I have
your
another
time.
speaker?
I saw that Mr. McElroy turned on his mic.
Mr. Coolman, I have one thing to say. I invited these people out here today because in lieu of holding the meeting at 4:30, I thought we were soliciting public comment, so you might hear some repetitive things. I asked them to come because these are people I've met in the advocacy field, spending their personal time after work advocating for transit or pedestrian safety that I met out there. And I thought having them, even if they are repeating the same statement, will give us encouragement to be bolder of our asks when we go to the county, that we know the public does have our back, that we can demand and ask greater things.
First of all, I appreciate the public coming. I think the fact that you haven't been here for 4.5 years, you probably could have answered most of these questions except the first speakers, okay? Just as a comment. Next speaker, please.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Doug, can I say something?
Certainly.
I appreciate you guys coming out here. I wish that more people would come out to the meetings and more people would speak out. And regardless of what you say and like you said, if it's repetitive, it shows support and maybe we can be a little more brief on some things, but in this particular case, it's the first time we've really had people from the public show up and speak at these things. So thank you for that.
Next speaker, please.
I think that's all of the public speakers, Mr. Chair. So now we can invite Ms. Barbara Boy, the Director of the Planning Council.
We're going into Broward County Land Use Plan update.
Yes, thank you. Hi.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, good evening. My name is Barbara. The Broward County Land Use Plan, kind of get you just knowing what the topics are that the Planning Council is really focused on for this update. A little bit about countywide land use planning. Many of you may or may not be aware that countywide land use planning was established in 1974. The voters established it. They voted for the county to have a countywide land use plan. This was a really interesting concept because it was new to the state of Florida. There weren't statutory requirements for it at that time. So 1975, the Planning Council is established and starts working on its first countywide land use plan. And that does a couple of things. Any local government that's within Broward County has to be at least as restrictive of this county plan, and it's the 70s. So there's still a lot of unincorporated area. We're still very focused on suburban development, single occupancy vehicle. Those are also single occupancy vehicles, probably a newer term at that time. The Planning Council takes form. They adopt their first plan with the county commission in 1977. Florida government kind of catches up with that. There's a statutory requirement in 1985 with the Growth Management Act that every city and county have its own future land use element and comprehensive plan. So what that further means for the county, since there's countywide land use authority, is now we're creating a system where we're certifying city plans to ensure that they're at least as restrictive as the county plan. There's restrictions, maximum densities. Cities have to fall in line with that, taking into account all the variety of environmental policies, transportation policies, all of these pieces. So that happens, that gears up in 85. The county readopts a county land use plan in 1989 and then amends it hundreds of times through the years until 2017, when the entire plan is struck and we come up with a new plan called Broward Next, where we've taken what are the most important things in Broward County into the county. And why is this so important? Because we're still facing population growth. Here we are now, we have a true urban boundary in Broward County, which you can see here, because everything west of that, 2/3 of the county, is conservation. So that's another thing that people sometimes forget about, that we do have 2/3 of the county that's conservation. But, we have our boundary established. Right now, we're just under 2 million people, and we're looking at as few as 294. There's some estimates up to 600,000 additional residents by 2050. So that's what we're planning for the future of these residents. And where is that growth going to be accommodated? Because Broward is almost built out in its urban area. You can see here there's some vacant lands. And on this map, how it's portrayed, some of these are parking lots. They may be actual vacant parcels. Most of the county, 65% is residential land use. And that's already constructed. And more than half of that, 50% of all of the land use is low density, single family. Maybe there's some townhouses nearby, but primarily single family. But you can see the development patterns. The red is commercial corridors or commerce corridors along the county. The blue are activity centers where cities have identified redevelopment areas and areas primed for development. You see that's along Federal Highway to the east, the downtown Fort Lauderdale area as you move west to 441, the South Florida Education Center in the town of Davie, and then even a little bit further west, the city of Miramar has established some of these redevelopment areas. This is just a map portraying what we talked about, that 65% of the land use is residential right now. So where are we going to see redevelopment opportunities? I think it's been clear since 2017, we've identified these commerce designated corridors and activity centers as the areas that are primed for redevelopment. And that's almost it's a natural relationship with transportation. These are along arterials primarily. There are underutilized parcels of land that have vacant retail, large surface lots, and that's what we have been seeing. I would say the past 10 years are redevelopment opportunities in these areas. Especially, I would even say Plantation was one of the first cities to start really seeing that in their corridors, where they would have an office building with a huge surface parking lot. And what can they do with that land? It has direct access to arterial transit and transportation. So that's really what we anticipate where the future growth is going to be seen, that natural connection. So what we did in 2017, I'm going to give you a very brief summary of kind of the hot topics, the highlighted regional issues, and what was done then, what's been done since 2017, and what we're focused on for this update that's happening right now. So climate change resilience, the county really was at the forefront of climate action planning, priority planning areas, making sure that as land use planning is happening, that resiliency is addressed. So that's a very important topic in the plan. Targeted redevelopment, retaining requirements for activity center, smart growth policies, ensuring that the Broward redevelopment program, which is kind of the transition from community redevelopment areas, is supported. Limitations on the development of the barrier island as a natural area and for resiliency planning purposes. Golf course conversion. It's been a topic for the past 20 years. Much of what we would say is vacant land, older golf courses, how that's redeveloped, making sure that that's addressed in land use planning. And then Also, always retaining the requirements for adequate public facilities and services, which is required by statute but is reinforced in the county plan. Multimodal, ensuring complete streets policies are addressed in the plan, strong port and aviation land use plan policies, and then the retention of the Broward County Traffic Ways Plan, which I just want to touch on for a second because it's a really interesting thing that is also unique to Broward County, is this Traffic Ways Plan, which is the right-of-way preservation plan that was established in the 1960s and has been carried forward to today. And essentially, the county and the cities have been able to access billions of dollars in right-of-way as development has occurred. So that plan is still in place also. Natural resource protection and enhancement. We have a very strong environmental program. Much of that happens through licensing and permitting at the time of permits, but strongly support it in the county plan, maintaining open space requirements, ensuring that historic, archaeological, and paleontological resources are protected. The county opposition to fracking, that came up just a couple years ago in the Everglades. The county decided to enhance the policy regarding that to ensure that everyone would know when they're reading through the county plan. And then compatible urban agriculture, which actually generally comes down to what cities are looking for, but allowing it and promoting it in the county. Housing in 2017 was a hot topic. It's obviously an even hotter topic today and continued, but we continuously look at bonus density programs, how we can promote housing opportunities along the corridors, how can we incentivize local governments, can we count studio units as a half a dwelling unit density, because even though we're promoting densification, there's still a standard and there's still a level of commitment, I think, from the cities and counties of what they want to see for the future of the county, and that's not necessarily unlimited in every case, but maybe along the transportation corridors. So also alternative construction techniques are promoted in the plan as of 2017. And then this renewed intergovernmental partnership slide is really just about the things that we did, as I said, to incentivize the relationship between the city and county, because there can be that rub. With the county having the authority and cities having their own land use plans and their own codes that they're enforcing. So sometimes there can be conflict, but really the county plan has, I think, been recreated to promote the relationships and ensure that we're creating incentives and positive future for the local governments. So it was really a shift to regional policy issues. What did the county want to be? These are just the highlights that we went through in the previous slides on this slide. So 2017, we strike the whole plan. We adopt an entirely new plan. We still continue to amend the plan, the text and the map from time to time to address timely issues. Here are just some of the highlights. Seawall ordinances for resiliency planning, updates to bonus density formulas, continuing to ensure that when land use planning, priority planning areas, those are areas that could be subject to 3 feet of sea level rise by 2070, ensure that that's taken into account when development decisions are being made. Some more incentive policies, residential by right and the community land use, if there's an affordable housing component. How can we promote density? That's one of the concepts. And then expanding residential by right and commerce to within a half a mile of passenger rail stations. So that's an expansion of what we call the Geller policy, which is that red and blue map that I showed you earlier, residential by right and commerce categories and activity centers. So always with an eye for the future and how to promote densification opportunities. So what are we doing for 2024? So it's been 7 years since that huge update, and so the Planning Council has created a framework and established its policy priorities. And really the main topics that we're looking at: affordable housing, sea level rise and resiliency planning, transportation, and redevelopment. So even though it's 4 topics, obviously those are very 4 topics that are interrelated, and you can't look at one without the other. but really focusing on densification opportunities, how to ensure that resiliency planning is part of that, how transportation and transit opportunities tie into that, and looking towards the future of redevelopment in the county. So how are they planning on accomplishing those priorities? There's a detailed framework document. We've been having a subject matter expert presentation series. So far, we've had affordable housing. We've had, I think, 6 or 8 speakers on that over 2 days, and made presentations on how the Broward County Land Use Plan works for them, how it works against them, what they think could be better. Same with resiliency planning. This Tuesday, December 17th, we're going to have the transportation subject matter experts. That's going to be Corey Cuff-Lonergan, Gretchen Cassini, Peter Gies from the MPO speaking about the long-range transportation plan, a speaker from FDOT whose name I cannot remember for the life of me, and I was trying to find it on my phone, but he'll be speaking about ATMS and Bluetooth technology and how the state of Florida and this district is promoting that. And then a final speaker from the MPO, Andrew Riddle, who will be speaking about artificial intelligence planning, the relationship of technology, transportation, affordable housing, densification opportunities, how all those things work together. So if you can tune into that, everything is webcast, and all the links are on the website. But it's been a really successful series so far, and with that, the Planning Council, their steering committee, has taken that information and started giving the staff policy directives. So we're just starting to draft on some of these different topics, and that's what we'll be doing the next couple months. And then those policy proposals and options will be presented to the steering committee, go to the Planning Council, County Commission. I'm going to show you this second, kind of near the last slide. Here's the roadmap. So we're really here in the steering committee, number 3 and 4. That's where we're at right now. We're starting to, we won't have a Broward County Planning Council public hearing until at least June of this year. And then it would go to the County Commission for transmittal to the State of Florida review agencies no earlier than August of this year, then comes back around to finish the process. So the earliest we have this completed is between likely January and March of 2026. So we are always accepting public input. We have a constant contact list that we are sending out. We have about 1,400 people on it right now. And we are, whenever we send out notices, we're always accepting public information, and then we're keeping a running track on the framework of any either verbal comments received or written comments. That's how that's being tracked. If you want to join that mailing list, everything is on our Broward Next landing page, broward.org/BrowardNext, and that has all of the subject matter expert presentations and videos posted there, as well as the upcoming meeting dates. Or if you want to invite staff to one of your organizations or homeowners associations, we're happy to come give a presentation similar to this or as much detail on one of the particular topics that you would like to see. And with that, I would just thank you. This is my contact information. I answer my own phone. Call me anytime, and I'm happy to talk to you about anything. And with that, if you'd like to have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Barbara? Comments?
Can I make one comment?
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. The part of planning, the whole use, planning use, all that ties so well with transit, and I think that's where Broward County has an up on other counties around our little region. And it's interesting that you pointed out that we're stuck. We have a line with conservation on one side, and if you just go from Palm Beach, it's like you're filling up a bottle of water, and Miami's at the very bottom, and it's hard to get the water in and out because of the conservation. You only have so many avenues out, so it's a real challenge, and planning is probably one of the most important ingredients to creating a good plan. So I really appreciate the work you're doing, and I wonder, this is talking about land use and residential by right. what does that mean, residential?
So the
by right?
difference is I would say under the 77 and 89 plans, you were constricted to traditional land uses. Residential allows other uses too, but that's the primary thing. Commercial allows commercial and those associated uses. So we've really been trying to transition the plan to allow residential by right where it's appropriate, or using other tools, just kind of opening those opportunities, especially along those arterials in the transportation system. So I think that every conversation that we have at the Planning Council or County Commission, it goes back to affordable housing, additional density. Where can we find those opportunities? So I think all of these topics, obviously, like I said, they're interrelated, but kind of how do we get out of the traditional planning and move the county forward for additional opportunities?
So basically giving units.
Right, well,
Residential
creating
by right.
opportunities for units, right.
Because units are hard to come by in certain places.
Right, because we talked about 65% of the county is already designated residential, and most of that's built out. I mean, some of it's underbuilt, so there's thousands of units that maybe just can't be accessed by land use.
And can't go single family.
Right,
then.
and they're not going to be redeveloped, right? I mean, it's a very rare occasion that a single family neighborhood is going to be redeveloped holistically.
Right, interesting. Thank you.
Sure.
This is beyond the scope of what the Surtax does, but I just want to, while you're here, make one comment about building out arterials. And lately, the politically easy route for people to add more housing is to put the housing on the busy arterials. And I think in 30, 40 years, this will almost look like a form of redlining, that the people who own homes are insulated in the comfortable single-family neighborhoods, and the people who only can afford to rent are exposed to living on Broward Boulevard, Davie Boulevard, because that's where it seems like we're putting our multi-family. With the understanding that if we turn these into tree-lined corridors, sure, that's great. Set up now, they're really aggressive state roads. So that's my thought.
Thank you.
Barbara, in regards to residential by right, I know there's been a discussion of putting residential in commercial, and I assume that's something that you're talking about changing?
Yes, so several slides back, there was the red and blue map. The red areas are now adopted and identified as residential by right if you have an affordable housing component, or if you're buying out at a cost per unit for every unit you want to construct and you meet that criteria.
Just to think about, or residential in schools they're talking about. The other thing that I'm concerned about a little bit, when you say reuse of golf courses, I know there's economics to it, for and against it, but I believe we've counted an awful lot of that green space as our park numbers. I'm not saying they don't need to be repositioned or something, but just keep in mind, if we wipe out these green spaces and put whatever you want, we're going to be short. We're already short of green space, okay? Whether it's being used for golf, at least it's open, okay? So I just wanted to...
100%, that's one of the criteria. I mean, I didn't go into the detail of it, but if there's a proposal for a land use change to a golf course, there's an open space component that has to be met. In addition, cities are not permitted to count entire golf courses towards that inventory for that very reason, unless it's something like Plantation Preserve on Broward Boulevard, where it was purchased through the county bond program. So it's going to be open space in perpetuity because they are unable to develop that.
I saw you had urban agriculture. Maybe that's a better use
for
some of that golf. Thank you very much. Anybody
Sure.
else? Thank you very, very much.
I'll see you in a few months. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, one of Alan's favorites here, 3, traffic signal system update.
Love it.
All right. Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Rasim Awad, and I'm the Director of the Traffic Engineering Division here to provide you an update on the traffic signal system. So I'm going to share some updates regarding the adaptive traffic control systems, but also share some information as to our synchronization program and the traffic signal infrastructure in general, the challenges, and maybe some of the opportunities that go with it. All right, so this is similar to what you've seen back in August. However, there are two key updates that I will get into here in a second. But the map basically breaks down those programmed projects through 2029, the funded ones, with the blue lines representing the projects that are going to be carried out by the state, and the yellow ones are ones that are going to be carried out by the county. As far as the status, the ones that are currently under varying stages of constructions are listed here. And here's the primary update. The one up top shows 100%. That's US 1 through the downtown Fort Lauderdale area from 595 to Broward Boulevard, including Broward Boulevard. And it has been completed toward the last week of Thanksgiving. It's still being fine-tuned, but I'll share some details on that here in a few seconds. The one right under it, University Drive, in this area here, we're expecting that will be completed by next week. We have the vendor coming down and the system will be integrated. And here are a few others that are under various stages of design. And this is the map that, I'm sorry, last time did not work, but hopefully gives you a visual by year as best as we can. We anticipated the completion years of these projects. And as I go through it, you'll see how these are going to be integrated and coming online through, again, the funded portion, which is 2029. But then past that, over 2030, these are still planned, unfunded, and yet to be fully vetted. All right, back to US 1, the one that's been just integrated. If you look at this chart, the y-axis here is what we call the system cycle length. The cycle length is the time it takes to basically service all movements at one intersection. Now, on a system, on a series of signals, they all have to run that same setup or same cycle. So that's what the y-axis is. And then the bottom axis, the x-axis, I guess, is the time of day. This is a typical weekday that we looked at just to see if it's properly adapting. Again, there's going to be a lot more measures coming, but just initial glance, it seems to be trying to do what it's intended to do. If you look at the AM peak, the orange line is our pre-scheduled cycle lengths. So you see, it's kind of predetermined. That's the schedule that we want to break with these systems. And sure enough, if you look at the AM peak, it starts at 6:30, leading up to the peak, I guess the core of the peak, the meat of the peak. The adaptive system did not necessarily need to use that higher cycle. That means lower overall delay, lower side street delay in the morning time. And then it used that for a little bit. And then during the midday, you see some peaks and valleys. It's adjusting basically and adapting to the real measured demand. Same for the PM peak. Instead of holding steady through from about 3:30 or so till 7 under our older system, now it's kind of going up and down based on demand. That's, again, initial glance. There will be more measures that will see what the volumes are, what the delay is across the board. So on to our synchronization system and program, our annual program. I want to share some information as far as it's one of our core functions, and it came up a number of times. I want to make sure I shed some light on that. So we basically retime a third of our traffic signals annually. The process starts with collecting traffic data, travel times, then we build simulation models. That's what you see on the bottom right. That's the image from the simulation program that we use. We optimize the systems. We build the databases, go out and implement in the field. Then that becomes an iterative process that bounces back and forth until we're kind of happy with the results. Then we do a before and after assessment. Our goal is basically, obviously, to synchronize the major roadway, the traffic signals on the major roadway, and by providing what we call a green band or green wave through the system. With that said, one of the challenges or constraints that we run into, and that goes for adaptive or non-adaptive, when you go from an on-demand free operation that you maybe experience at night when the signal is much more responsive to you, is that there's always a guaranteed amount of green time for the main line too, so that we can align these signals. In this case, if you look at the little image, we're trying to show you that, like, for example, this is an east-west corridor. If you look at both ends, these are larger intersections. So they basically dictate what we need to use across the corridor as a whole. And thereby, the smaller intersections in the middle, the side street pays a little as far as delay goes. However, of course, there's a net benefit by moving the masses on the main line. Again, we have a comprehensive program. These are some of the maps from recent years as to the corridors that we tackled. Again, it's about every corridor gets retimed every maybe 3 to 4 years, which actually exceeds what the Federal Highway Administration traffic. Into that spectrum. So we're kind of in those two areas that have and present some challenges to us. So I wanted to show you some of these challenges. They're very susceptible to weather conditions, lighting conditions, shadows, and glare, occlusion from bigger vehicles hiding those smaller vehicles. So if you look at the bottom left there, you see the zone result of the hard shadow in the background. It takes a few cycles, then it figures out, all right, this is part of the background, now we can work properly. Or not. And that's likely some dirt or smudge on the lens. And in this environment with this, salt in the air, that's very labor intensive to keep track of. So what have we done? Two primary things through the map, actually. For all these systems, we deployed another layer of devices that bring back those video detection streams centrally so that our staff can be more proactive in issuing tickets to address the issues. And this chart shows the last 5 years or so. The top line is the proactive tickets we generated, and the bottom one are reactive ones that get called in, hey, there's an issue at this traffic signal. So that has been a very successful endeavor that we've taken. The other one is that we, of course, experimented and deployed some of the state-of-the-art sensors. Some videos, how it not only overcomes the shadow effects, the environment effects, but it also differentiates the different users, pedestrians and cyclists, which is set up for the future as far as responsiveness goes. However, there comes the evolving technology challenges. As of this year, even though some of these systems have been put in just a year ago, the vendor came up with a new version or new generation of it that is not downward compatible, unfortunately. So, and that's very common in signal systems. So that means not only the sensors up in the air need to be changed, but also the guts and the processors in the cabinet need to be swapped out, and maybe the wiring too. Which leads me to the final summary thoughts of challenges and opportunities. We obviously want to invest in the right technologies. Some of the things we've done so far with the near-miss detection as far on the safety side of things, which is being expanded this year, the adaptive traffic control systems that are coming, the connectivity, some of the, we shared that we put in for a grant for solidifying our wireless communication, again, to set up for future applications. These are all a good baseline as to what's to come. However, as I just mentioned in the sensors, the proprietary nature of the industry is one big challenge that we keep running into. And then the biggest one is the operations and maintenance, and not necessarily the day-to-day. It's the systematic update and upgrades of our field infrastructure that we need to bring them up to date, but also not only do they age quickly, these are sensitive electronics, they need a lot of resources to systematically and routinely be updated, but also they get obsolete quickly. So that's one of our biggest challenge that presents an opportunity, I would say. With that said, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions, anyone? I have a couple. Looking at the time frame,
yes,
this is probably not going to be completed for 7 or 8 years. Maybe to take some pressure off, if this were completed tomorrow, what would the improvement time be? How many more cars would get through and how much less time? Because if you're saying that we're only going to improve these intersections by X%, then maybe my next question might be, how much are we spending to improve these intersections by? This may not be the magic pill, is what I'm saying.
It certainly isn't.
Personally, I thought it might be, but if I got to wait 8 years to take it, can you just generalize about that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And given the time frame and anticipated time frame, I would say the good news is that by next year we would have a good 5 of these systems active. And if you recall, we built into these systems high resolution measures of effectiveness. We showed you all these detailed charts that are good for us, the operator, to see, but we also intend to push them out as measures of effectiveness in a simplified manner so that it can be seen. So time will tell. Every corridor is a little different as far as constraints, but I can tell you that if we go back to the chart, the fact that we are no longer limited to a schedule and we can fluctuate based on actual demand, we can address those, lane closures, disruptions from railroads and bridge preemptions. I think that's a benefit worth a while. But yes, time will tell. Yes, it can detect. Yes, because yes, absolutely. Not with this infrastructure. What this infrastructure actually does, we have those systems in place for the first responders, for emergency vehicles. Half of our system, about 700 signals, are equipped with preemption devices that stop everybody and give the right of way to fire trucks. What these systems help with is the recovery from that. Right now, because it's still a disruption, we recover faster with these systems. Mm-hmm.
You need to give me a heads up.
Okay. All right. So I got 2 questions.
Sure.
It says like Federal Highway US 1 is 100%, and then there's one that's 95%. So unless you get to 100%, you're not even, system's not activated, correct?
No, it is activated.
How does it work? It's 95 or 90 or 70%?
I'm sorry. Below 100, you're right. It's not activated.
Yeah.
My
okay,
bad.
So
I thought you meant 100%. Yeah.
Honestly, in my opinion, if we had to spend, I hear you that you think it could be a waste of money. I think it could be that we're not spending money fast enough, and we're spending money in big places where we're spending a lot of money. So maybe more resources are necessary to get some of this stuff up and running faster, because the system that's there now, and I can tell you from personal experience, is not very good. And I'm saying that in a nice way. And I often find myself cutting through people's neighborhoods to get to where I want to go. Now I'm just like, my go-to is to stay the hell off of US 1. Yeah, I'm just cutting through neighborhoods all the way home. So I'm just telling you, I think that there's a system out there. We may have the one, but unless you implement it quickly and effectively, we'll never know. And there's obviously a system in now because the same thing happens every time I go down Sunrise Boulevard. The same light change, so they're on some system. It's just not on one that actually helps move traffic. And then the other thing is it boggles my mind that we're buying equipment where the vendor sells you equipment that goes out of, it trends out in zero, like no time at all. To me, the contract with the vendor should be your equipment trends out, you're replacing my equipment, and you're bringing me new stuff immediately. I can't imagine that they could even stay in business because the word gets out from Broward County to Dade County or Monroe County, whoever starts telling everybody, these guys are selling you stuff that doesn't even stay current. That blows me away. So we got to figure it out because this is one of the things that, short of increasing transit, which takes a long time, which is going to be more of the correct pill probably, short of finding the last mile between transit, which is going to take time. This is one of the things that 99% of the people use cars, and they put a penny sales tax in to get this. And I think we need to find a way to expedite. I think we need to find a program that works effectively and efficiently, and get it done. Because I believe that once you get a bunch of them up at 100% and they start to figure it out and they start to learn and they start to adapt, I'll bet you will say, hey man, this is working a hell of a lot better than the other way was. So we just got to implement. And I don't think it's as expensive as, what would the young man say, $240 million a mile? I don't think it's that expensive. And I think we should be focusing in on this in a big way. Thank you. And thank you for your work and your time. I appreciate it.
Appreciate your input too.
I hate to ask you to come back, but do you think maybe you could email Gretchen or something when you get maybe other municipalities to get a better understanding of the dollar spent versus capacity increase? I've looked at previous Surtax meetings where you guys presented some like pilot beta studies and you seen like a 15% increase or something. But it seems that we're spending any money at all without a definitive answer of how much money gets us X amount of capacity seems irresponsible. I see that there's some improvement, but to not have it nailed on the head is wild because we know what the roadway capacity of adding a lane would be, XYZ. Traffic circles, is this continuous flow traffic? Can we just make more traffic circles? I was driving south on US 1 in Dade County, and all their arterial systems were out. So 27th Ave, 32nd Ave with US 1. It was like 7 in the morning, and everything was just working. People just were figuring it out, and that's not even designed to be figured out. So I'm thinking maybe the right technology is no technology, and we pull back to the basics.
Definitely roundabouts. I like roundabouts a lot because they're a lot safer too. But you need the right mix of traffic. Generally, you really have to assess it to see if it's a good candidate for a roundabout or not. But there's huge benefits to roundabouts.
Do you think the surtax is funding enough of the traffic circles that you guys propose, or do you think we should be doing more traffic circles, being more aggressive?
I'm not sure I have the answer for you. I don't know, Tony, maybe you can shed some light. I'm sorry.
Of course. Tony Hui, Public Works Department. Traffic circles are a great idea. We use them, we like them, but we like them in appropriate places. And let me just sort of explain. There's a couple of things is that traffic circles are right. We need right of way because they and so you need to have the right of way available in order to be able to install the traffic circle. The second thing about a traffic circle is that you need to have them in the right places that if you, you got 4 ways coming into what would be an intersection, you're converting into a traffic circle. So the way that traffic circle really works and becomes effective is if the flow of traffic into the intersection is more or less even, then they would work appropriately, because then you get the right circulation and cars are moving along the gaps and so forth. What happens is that if you don't have that sort of right distribution and you have more traffic going this way versus the other way, what happens is that the way with the more traffic tends to dominate the circle, and the side streets don't get in at all, and they start backing up and so forth. So those are some of the things, those are some of the issues that we have to think about in terms of traffic circle. It's like we like them, we like the idea of them. We want to install them in the appropriate places and in the right in the right locations.
All right, yeah, because maybe can you present traffic circles, because there's like published already data indicating the capacity of traffic circles. And I know there's like traffic circle technology, right? Like Ireland has the Irish like turbo roundabout that can do like 40,000 cars or X amount per day. I mean, that's like an arterial. Yeah, that's it. I wanted to say this to Alan too. You can, just so you know this, traffic lights are super confusing when you understand how they work. Watch like some YouTube videos how traffic lights work, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But basically, that frustration you feel when you hit multiple reds is actually intentional, because the way traffic lights work, specifically like on Broward Boulevard, is they're boxing cars together and they're moving them as units, so they can create opportunities of movement for left and right hand turning cars. So even with the greatest arterial traffic management system, we would never truly see continuous flow of traffic, because the concept of bunching still has to occur to create opportunities for turning. So, yeah, so maybe we just eliminate left-hand turns in Broward County or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
Let's get wild.
Especially when you have odd spacing between signals. To your point, odd spacing between signals create a bigger challenge as to, moving traffic in both directions under the same cycle, if you will, and then still trying to address the gaps that get quickly filled with those ones that are closely spaced. Yeah, it's an art and a science. We play with these models left and right to try to align them, but we're hoping.
I just want a faster car. That's what I did.
Racine, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You all have a happy holiday.
Laura Rogers.
And Mr.
Program
Chair,
performance. This is our third session, right? You're still refining what you're going to do, right?
We're gonna work through that today.
Huh?
We're gonna work through that today, right now.
So
Okay.
just give me 1 minute. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention to the group that we are going to postpone the last presentation. We're going to move it to February so that you all can leave after this. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
That'll make a low-stress meeting out of it. Okay. Lower stress.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we're back here, our final planning session, and recapping our timeline. We had the request, we spoke about a plan, we got your suggestions at the last meeting, we've taken that information, we've come up with 3 suggestions or recommendations for some audits, and we'd like to get your feedback and preference on those audits, and we'll see where that takes us. When we went through the information that you gave us last time, we went through the notes and all the feedback received, and we've come up with these 3 different plans, and we're trying to think about what's going to have the best potential impact. We want to try to avoid duplication, and our suggestion today is that from these 3 choices, we'll ask each member to rank their preference 1, 2, 3. And then we can take that information back and kind of tally it and see collectively what those preferences would be. And then we'll consider that ranking. We're establishing our 2025 audit plan right now. And slight disclaimer, everything that I'm presenting here now, that's just a sketch, it's an outline. We always, as we progress through work, the county auditor provides direction, feedback, we make adjustments based on information as we go. But wait, there's more. All audits include initial research and planning. We're presenting a topic to you, but
And the outline today is not as brief as it would seem. There's a lot more behind an audit. You know, we look at previous history, budgets, we conduct initial interviews, we look at other databases, performance metrics, a lot of things that are already in place. We have an extensive threat and risk process. And once we do all of our initial background work, then we move into a fieldwork phase, learning, gathering data and information, and then we have a report drafting phase, which really does take a significant amount of time because there's a lot of vetting and sharing of information, getting more feedback, and having everybody have a chance to look at those draft reports. Ultimately, we get to exit conferences where we're sharing those findings, finalizing our report, and getting responses from management. Our reports are shared with the Broward County Commission. We will share them here as well. We can have another session and come back and go into that report with you. And moving along, option one. We are continuing our suggestion on looking at the program objectives, focusing on the first 5 years of the surtax, looking at the original program goals, expanding connectivity, congestion management, improving transit, enhanced multimodal options, and economic development and benefits. Ideally, and again, this is a rough sketch, we would look at each of those areas, identify some performance metrics, take a look at where they've been over time, perhaps before surtax was implemented, and see where they are now and if there are any noticeable changes, and providing that data to you. And this report, as we spoke about before, is one that we foresee doing maybe every 5 years, kind of creating a plan and watching that continuous project. Again, results, I'm not prejudging anything, but the types of results we would get based on whatever the findings might be, looking at are we making sufficient progress on certain objectives? Are we collecting the data we need? Maybe there's new performance metrics that we should add into, I guess, the county's textbook, and see where we can improve on that and collect the data we need. Any questions? Option one? Okay, option two is also looking at the surtax program over the first 5 years, but more of a focus on the funding and taking a look at what's been spent, allocated, future projections. We heard feedback last time about return on investment, whether that's match or other elements. And then some analyses that we might be doing is looking at spending by those previous objectives, maybe looking at where the dollars went versus operations, construction, potentially if there's been supplanted funding, and looking at municipality dollars that have been given out. Again, opportunities for improvement based on results, but that kind of audit would be more focused maybe on budget and spending and recommendations and looking at those areas. Any questions? And then our last option was looking at traffic congestion improvements. We did have the presentation today. And this audit might take a closer look at different components of traffic engineering, whether it's the signalization, studies, improvements. A lot of that information was presented to you today, but it could be a deeper dive into some of that information, looking at what's current and future plans, and seeing if there's performance metrics within there that we can provide some information back to you on. It might not just be limited to traffic engineering. We may also look at what highway construction engineering or bridge and maintenance sections do as far as roadways, and looking at other components there, whether it's safety, widening, other areas, again, relating to the goals, but just seeing more specifically what's being done on traffic. Again, opportunities for improvement, of course, always based on the actual results. But again, it may be looking at some of those timelines, looking at some of those performance metrics, and maybe making some suggestions on areas that maybe we find needs a little extra help.
So is this a secret ballot or a show of hands?
Well, my we can just do a ballot on your choice. I was going to suggest a preference ranking where each member would rank 1, 2, 3 their choices, and then later we would tally them. We also have one person who's not here, and we can get her feedback as well, and then get back to you on what that preference ranking is and what the county auditor's final directions are.
Alan?
Yeah, so would it help us as a group to talk about these first before we vote on them? I would like to hear my colleagues and what their ideas are. I can tell you that I thought that our charge was to audit the performance of what it is we're doing. So, and I'm certain that the county is already auditing the money. And congestion improvements, I think, actually should fall into option 1, to be honest, because performance is measured and congestion is something that gets fixed through performance. So, and it even says on the second bullet below, study of Surtax program goals under option 1, congestion management. So for me, I thought the whole process was supposed to be about performance. We certainly don't have to repeat how the money's being spent. We have a budget. It's easy to audit. I'm quite sure the auditing department does that every year. So anyway, that's my thought.
I'll take a little bit of an issue with that, because I believe our challenge is to make sure this money is being spent properly. So I favor 2, and I would take maybe a comment from 1 and 3 and stick on the end of 2, but that's where I'm coming from.
But don't we get there though? in
Bill,
our
go ahead.
annual
Turn on
financial
your
audit?
microphone.
Nope. I'm on. The option 2 is more, it's closer to just what we normally get as part of our annual financial audit. The revenues that are coming in, and the expenditures going out, and internal controls and things like that are incorporated already in our annual financial audit.
There's here.
From ours and from our external auditors. Yes, from our external auditors, they look at the revenues, expenditures, assets, and of the Surtax fund. But I think with number 2, I think we'll take more of a deep dive on it. Usually they look at the overall financial aspects of it, but I think what we're talking about is taking more of a deep dive on it. The objectives, looking on operation versus design, something deeper than what they would do overall. As a external audit is usually more of a high level as opposed to internal audits looking at it.
I'm sorry, but to build on that annual financial audit is more about the accuracy of your financial statements. What we're proposing here is more of a performance perspective on not just the exact dollar that was spent, but looking at how it was spent and perhaps other analyses that could provide interesting information. So it's not just the accuracy of you have a report that says $10,000 was spent here. That's that annual audit that's telling you that was inaccurate.
Isn't it you're auditing the annual report that the board puts out, talking about all of our accomplishments?
Okay, that report, what Gretchen does every year, yes, there's a lot of financial information in there.
So you would be looking at what we claim through our annual report to the board. Are those reasonable expectations?
It's kind of hard to say because we haven't started it yet. Every audit is kind of like an open question. But maybe what the information you receive is about the Surtax dollars spent. What we're maybe talking about is comparing the Surtax dollars spent as a component of the larger county budget, and maybe seeing how the interplay between the two could be something that's explored more there, or looking at it a little bit more from a performance perspective rather than just financial transactions.
Any other comments before I vote?
I think, yeah, we'll vote on this. I don't know if it fully encompasses everything I like to see, but I guess the number one thing I would like to see is that the actual ballot language be broken down by your guys' office and not audited, those metrics. So I just pulled it up on my phone. Maybe we should get like it printed on the wall or something. We should see improvements to traffic congestion, improve roads and bridges, enhance traffic signal synchronization, develop safe sidewalks, XYZ, all those things. I think those are the metrics that your guys' office should be deciding on and then telling us, yes, we're making it safer, yes, we're improving traffic congestion, or no, we're not. I don't know if you guys
that is
agree.
essentially what that first choice is. I mean, we took those from maybe more specified goals that Ms. Cassini provided us, but that is the spirit of option one.
So option one is exactly
It's
a
looking at
replica.
that, and I know you had various other suggestions. Let me say again, this is year one. You know, whatever comes up as choice two may be something that we consider for our audit plan next year. You know, we felt that we were at the point that a more comprehensive look at a project or would be appropriate at this time.
Okay, Debbie first, then Ellen.
I just had a question. Are each or all three the same, like, scope, level of effort, and or is one a more narrow choice? Yeah.
One may be broad because there's multiple topics to look at. Two may be the shortest scope or less steps because it is a little bit more, you know, the numbers are there. Three could also take a lot of effort, you know, really getting into systems and looking at those.
I agree with Raymond. I think that specifically that, first of all, the citizens voted on this surtax, and we should be, as an oversight board, looking at exactly what the objectives were in the whatever it's called. What was it? The ballot. Yeah. And I think that that's what we should do, and we should measure those metrics and make sure that they're performing. And just from my perspective, being in the business of trying to build something under a budget, I do that. But at the end of the day, if something doesn't perform, it doesn't matter if you met budget. Okay, performance is everything, and it's like having a really great computer and a piece of crap. Okay, you'll buy the more expensive, better computer every time. And if we're going to spend a penny sales tax, I'd rather do fewer projects and do them to where they perform exceptionally over trying to meet the budget and saying, okay, we got 10 people to go a mile and it costs us $100. To me, the performance is the most important thing. Thank you.
Alan, I kind of agree, except I don't think in 5 years we're in position to judge performance. I could be wrong, but I don't see it. I think the base foundation is how we spent, what we did. Next year we can look, but I don't think we've been in business long enough to judge performance. We're
Boy, I hope companies are judged a little bit higher than that because they'll be out of business.
I disagree with the chair. I think we've been around for 5 years. It's long enough to establish a base. And I think for the initial, yes. And this will be the base to compare into the future years. And we could always ask you for additional, the audits, just deep, dive in certain area, whether it's congestion or certain funding areas or so forth. But I think it'll be good to have that base which is looking into, 5 objectives, established, and then where we are, and then, and how we compare in the future years. And I think 5 years is long enough.
Yes, and that was our recommendation at the previous meeting, was to kind of take this, I think another member phrased it as kind of like a report card, and taking a look at those. And we may not see a lot of progress yet, but if you don't start measuring at some point, you never know if there was progress. And, having that now could be a good look. And we may realize, I can't tell you because we don't even have the information we need. But if we start collecting information in these areas, 5 years from now, the next team may be able to give you more information. And sometimes that's what happens in a first audit of this type. But, you have a board of 9 members and 9 opinions, and that's why we thought the preference ranking might have everybody feel like they had a bit of a voice in that final
Any other comments?
recommendations.
Gretchen, you just fill it out?
Yes.
Turn them
So
into Gretchen?
if you want
I
traffic
gave you a blank one.
congestion to be number 1, that's what you would put as number 1 if that's your first choice.
Cool.
And then we will total it up, and we will have the lowest score would be the highest preference.
Okay.
And we will wait for your vice chair's vote, and we will tally and let you know, and then we will work that as much as possible into our final audit plan.
We postponed the low stress till next meeting, correct? Under chair report, we've also, you received copies of the minutes, but we can't vote on them tonight because of the fact that this is a workshop and technically it wasn't announced. So we're not going to come and get in this situation again, because if we have a future workshop, we will do it in such a way that, what is it, we can have official action? So your minutes will be coming to you again after the minutes there'll be minutes of this meeting, correct?
Yeah.
And those minutes are going to come out generally 2 to 4 weeks, verbatim minutes after the meeting. So that'll be at least a couple months before. I wanted them at least to come out as soon as they could, so you could read them as close to the meeting. So the next meeting, you're going to have to vote on 3 sets of meetings. But we figured out a way around that, so we won't have to do that anymore. That's all I have. Member reports?
Can we just ask random stuff now? That's
Pardon?
not. Can we talk about random
Anything
stuff now?
on your mind? Because you can't talk outside this room.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring this up. Maybe we can put it on the agenda so we could discuss it more formally next meeting in February. Personally, I came into this space because I felt like, not that you guys weren't doing enough, that I wasn't seeing enough. And I think we should have a level of metric tracking that I would like us to request from the MAP administration, as well as maybe reach out and go on beyond to the county level. And the metrics I'm looking at are kind of specific, that like when a municipality submits a project for roadway widening, if there's fatalities on that roadway, we should understand why they think it's justified to widen the roadway, because that is us funding a project that's going counter to the ballot language. There's a bunch of different metrics that we can look at, and I think it's worthy of having a discussion about it, so that all the projects that come upon us later on as we vote will have these metrics on it. And then we could approve or deny certain projects based on various metrics. Another metric I would like to see is like sidewalk completion, stuff like that. So, Daniel, guys.
Mr. Attorney?
Well, again, only one comment in terms of that the board is, again, reviewing projects for whether or not they are eligible or not, not whether or not ultimately the county commission is going to decide to fund them based on a recommendation, either whether it is a county project or from a recommendation from the MPO, for example, as has been done before. So I just want to make it very clear that it's not as if the board, this oversight board has the ability when it looks at a project to say, we don't like this project, therefore it is not going to go forward. So I just want to make that
just based on the comment that you had made. Obviously, whether getting that information and the metrics that you're talking about and having a discussion with the board about whether or not it wants to have those as part of the process, certainly is, based on the will of the oversight board, a valuable aspect of the review. I just want to make sure that we're clear as to what the scope of the review winds up being.
Nathaniel, we do have the ability, though, to suggest that maybe that project have some other things.
You absolutely have the ability to suggest
There's a
any
difference
number of
between-
things.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Cooley, you said it correct, and that's what I would like to see, so we can make sure that every project that leaves, we have our fingerprint on, that leaves this room that we approve, we're making sure in our best faith that the metrics that we're all aiming to hit are being hit. So if we can discuss that next time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Could I'm back in August of 2023 in approving the 24 budget, long-range financial goals. We had a rather extensive discussion about the potential conflicts that could be arising because of what I called and what some people call a mega project, being the $3 billion that we are in the process of committing to 5 projects surrounding the airport and the port. And we had made recommendations to the county administrator that she consider some kind of an organizational and reporting process to show that those things are, some of the concerns being, well, you're planning on 5 projects. What if only 3 of them ever get federal funding or state funding or whatever? Does the other 2 still make sense or not? That type of issue, or traffic congestion during the construction period. How do those entities, those 5 projects, and each one of those projects, whether it be the people mover, the bypass road, the airport connector, each one of those projects have project managers in that particular organization, whether it be streets and highways or mass transit. But there is no kind of organization that I see that deals with those potential conflict areas and plan a program to accomplish the total program. So I'm asking board direction to put something on our February agenda to allow staff to come back to us and show us how they are coordinating and making sure that those projects are in fact meshing. I mean, we've talked about some of the projects for 20 years now, and it's time that we get those projects moving. Now, like the bypass road, it's already under construction, ready for next year. Mass Transit, I think, is in the process of acquiring a program manager for their light rail connector. So just direction from the board, if that's approved, to work with staff to put something on our agenda for February meeting.
Yeah, Gretchen, you understand that? I mean, basically, we have enough money coming in to cover all these projects, right?
Yeah, the issue is, it's $3 billion, but that includes federal and state fundings. And of course, now we're also potential facing problems with a reduction in federal funding support for some of those projects too. So what we have assumed that we'll get in grants may not be there. And how does that affect the total program? So you don't build a bridge over nowhere okay?
So let me make sure I'm clear. You would like to have an action item on the agenda or a presentation item on the agenda to find out what the plans are with respect to those projects? The latter? A presentation?
Pardon?
You would prefer to have a presentation about the status of those 5 projects?
Status of those projects, how they tie together, and what is the organization to, who do we look to towards accomplishing the overall program?
Okay. Got it.
Almost like you could color code, we have this money was coming from this, or so we really know the reality of them and timing.
But we have that. I did that exercise already. I think the question that I'm hearing from Mr. Allen is a more specific one about what are our what are our strategies and approaches with respect to having these projects move forward? Because there's so much of a funding gap for many of those big projects. Automated people mover, intermodal center, and to some extent, the assumptions around light rail may need to be
I'm trying to avoid the
revisited.
big dig in Boston or the rail in California where bridges and stuff are built and they don't connect to any, or the bridge in Alaska from several years ago that went to nowhere.
Anyone else? Hearing none, I think we will adjourn. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody, and Happy New Year. See you all in February.
Thank you.